are strides, intervals, and other types of speed workouts. How do I incorporate those into my training? Well, as you can probably imagine, there's a bit more of a complicated answer than on this day you do this thing, on this day you do that thing. So I'm going to try and break this down a little bit. Firstly, in the order the question came, and then adding some additional pieces as well. So first thing, strides. Strides are something that you can incorporate into your training as much or as little as you would like. I would encourage probably 2 to 4 times a week, starting at twice a week, and then building up to 4. If you feel like it, there's absolutely no pressure. I think as long as you're getting in a few times a week, that's all you really need. So strides, those of you who do together runs know that we do these often, or every time we do a together run, or almost every time we do a together run. And that is going to be where those of you who do together runs are going to hear my voice in your head before I've even said it, where you're going to run for 10 to 15 seconds at about 80% of your max. So if you imagine 100% being your max speed, like as fast as you could sprint, you're going to be going about 80%. So you're going to do this for about 10 to 15 seconds. Now, typically these are done at the end of a regular run, so just an easy recovery run to get some leg turnover. They can also be done throughout runs, sprinkled in here and there, which is what we do in together runs. Or if you are really training hard and working towards some kind of goal race, you may want to incorporate them before you do your workout. So in between, when you've done your warm-up, and when you start your workout, particularly if it's something speed work, if you do maybe 2 to 4 strides in that period, that is a way to prep your legs, to prepare, to get ready for the speed work ahead. Now, as I said, 10 to 15 seconds, about 80% of your max. You want to make sure that you are mostly recovered before you go on to the next one. So if you are doing it after a run, or before a workout, you want to make sure that you are taking, 30 seconds to a minute between each one. You can stand, you can walk about a bit, you can jog if you want to, but you want to make sure you're mostly recovered going into each of these. Now, I know especially with going into a workout, it may seem a little bit like, hold on, how am I going to do this before a workout or after a run and not tire myself out with these? That is the point of them being maybe 2 to 4, or maybe if you have been doing it for a while, building up to 4 to 6. It's not that long of an interval, it's not that intense, and it's just going to help turn over your legs. And I know it can seem counterintuitive, but it really does help. Now, when I say stride, this is a key part to mention here. This does not mean striding, kind of bounding, taking these big, long steps, striding out, as the word would infer. In fact, it actually means taking more steps, kind of increasing your cadence, as they say, taking more steps, quicker turnover. And while at first that may mean that you're kind of road runner shuffling along, over time your body will you will propel yourself with each step to go further without taking these big steps. If you start taking these big steps and start trying to, as what I think most of us logically would think striding out would be, you are then going to get yourself in trouble with overstriding, putting yourself at risk of injuries, and it's just not going to help you. So those are strides. The next thing, intervals. Intervals are something that we want to be incorporating into a training segment if we are training for a race. And I want to add, by the way, there's a link below to a blog post that I have done that has 4 workouts that I think should be incorporated into marathon training. I would definitely encourage you to go take a read of that to give you more detail and depth. There's only so much I can say here. But interval workouts should be done for any kind of training block you're doing, be it from a mile all the way up to even an ultra. It's just going to be varying distances, varying intensities, and varying speeds to which you are doing this depending on what you are doing. So I can't give you a specific answer as to what intervals you should be doing, because it's going to depend on your experience. It's going to depend on what race you're doing. It's going to depend on how fast you're going. One thing I will say is, quite often when people come to me and say they had cramps in races, it's often not electrolyte based. It's actually because your body is not prepared through your training to run at that intensity for that duration of time. So that would indicate to me that you had not done enough at just under what you hoped your race pace would be. So let's say your race pace, what you hope your race pace to be in your next marathon is 9-minute pace. You want to be having a good chunk of interval work that is around 8:30 to 9-minute pace. And that will be like mile repeats, or that will be cut downs like a 2 mile, 1.5 mile, 1 mile, 800 times 3, something like that. Those things are going to be what prepare you for the race ahead. Those are intervals, but they are also going to get your body used to running at a harder effort for a longer period of time. Now, finally, other types of speed workouts. I mean, there's so many things I could talk about there. One thing I will typically say is that people tend to focus a lot on track workouts or speed workouts, 8x400 or 4x800 or 6x1000. Those workouts are typically overused, and not enough emphasis is put on the either longer duration tempo runs, which means just kind of a steady state, like a hard 4 to 10 mile, depending on what you're doing, run where you are running at a pace that you can obviously keep it up for that long, but it's not so hard that you can't it's not easy enough that you can kind of have a conversation. You're working very hard, and each mile that goes by, you are working harder to keep up the same pace. So I do want to say that while speed workouts and interval workouts are important, often they are leaned on too much, and the longer duration, solid tempo run like efforts, or the 2x3 mile efforts are forgoed, and I think that's where people often pay the price. So how do you incorporate them into your training? Again, that is a loaded question depending on what you're doing. Again, I would encourage you to go check out that blog post below. That's going to give you more specifics if you are running for a marathon. But the best thing you can do is to find a coach. I do have recommendations for you. You can send me a message if you are looking for a coach. I do not coach, but I do have training plans that will get you prepared for your race. These are effort-based, which is a little bit different to what you might expect, but they work. We have had dozens of people come through our training plans at this point, and I don't push them that hard. And they've, I shouldn't say, I can't speak for every single person, but I've had a lot of messages about people who are skeptical at first, who have absolutely knocked it out of the park because they finally learned to understand their body. Steve has created this training plan that we have that is perfect. Steve is a genius when it comes to these, getting these training plans right, getting people peaked at the right time. So I strongly encourage you to go check out our Running for Real training plans, which there'll be a link below or in the show notes. And if not, go find a coach if you are able to do so. That way they can tailor it exactly to you and your needs. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.